On Thanksgiving morning, I stood at the edge of my driveway holding a small box of pumpkin tarts I'd spent all night baking, unsure if I should even knock. The sky was grey, the air cold but dry, and everything felt off. I'd been invited, or so I thought. A casual text from my son Mark's wife, Linda, had said, "Dinner starts at 5, but something about it had felt cold, detached. Still, it was Thanksgiving. A mother should be with her family, right? Especially after everything I'd done for them. I had helped Mark through college after his father died. I sold my jewellery to help him launch his business. And when they bought this new house last year, I co-signed the loan. Quietly. Without ever expecting a thank you. I just wanted them to feel secure. But lately, it was like I'd become invisible. The front door opened before I even reached the porch. Linda stood there, dressed in silk beige with a glass of white wine in hand. She blinked slowly when she saw me. "Oh," she said. "You're early." Her smile was tight. Her eyes didn't match it. "I brought dessert," I said, lifting the box. "Pumpkin, your favourite." She didn't even look down. "Sure. Come in, I guess." The way she said "I guess" made my heart twist. But I stepped in. The house smelled like cinnamon and sage. Kids' laughter echoed from the upstairs hallway. Music was playing low. Everything should have felt warm. Instead, the air felt sharp, too clean, too hostile. Mark was standing by the fireplace with a glass in his hand, laughing with some of Linda's relatives. He barely glanced at me. "Hey, Mum," he said, like I was a neighbour dropping off mail. "You made it." He didn't come over, didn't hug me, didn't offer to take my coat. I placed the dessert in the kitchen. No one followed. I stood there for a few minutes, unsure what to do. Then I returned to the living room, but all the seats were taken. No one offered me one. No one even looked up. Dinner was set for 12. The long mahogany table was immaculately arranged. Crystal glasses, gold-rimmed plates, name cards. I searched for mine, walking slowly around the table. I couldn't find it. I went around again. "Is mine missing?" I asked. Linda appeared beside me, swirling her wine. "We didn't know you were actually coming. But you invited me." She tilted her head, smiled. "Well, technically," I said when dinner was. "I didn't realise that meant you'd assume a seat was saved." Her voice was sugary, like poison coated in syrup. Mark didn't say a word. He stood frozen, watching his wife speak like that. And then he nodded. He actually nodded. "It's fine, Mum. You can just grab something later. There's leftovers." I stared at my own son, the man I raised, and I couldn't recognise him. "Mark," I said quietly, "this is Thanksgiving." That's when he said it. "You're not family. Leave." Just like that. My heart cracked in places I didn't know existed. His wife laughed, softly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. Some of the guests shifted awkwardly. No one stood up. Not even my grandson, who peeked down from the stairs, then turned away. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even move. I just stood there, processing every syllable. Then I turned around, walked back to the foyer, picked up my coat, slipped it on slowly, like I'd done it 1,000 times. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and made one call. One single call. "It's time," I said into the phone. The voice on the other end said, "Understood," and I hung up. I stepped outside, shut the door behind me, and stood beside my car for a moment. I didn't even need to drive away. Inside, they were still talking, still laughing, still serving food. But within 5 minutes, everything changed. First, the lights flickered. Then Linda's brother got a text and looked panicked. He whispered to his wife, who pulled her kids out of their seats. Mark's business partner stormed in through the front door, yelling something I couldn't quite hear. Linda looked confused. Her wine glass fell and shattered on the floor. People began checking their phones, standing up, asking questions, arguing. And then they started walking out, one by one. Mark's aunt, his cousin, Linda's boss, even her mother. They all left their plates untouched, and Mark just stood there, frozen, pale, alone. And I smiled. But I didn't leave yet, because what came next would make everyone remember this Thanksgiving for the rest of their lives. And I was just getting started. I stood under the porch light, calm as ever, watching the chaos unfold behind their fancy windows. From the outside, their home still looked perfect, brick walls glowing with warm light, wreath on the door, candle-lit windows. But inside, the storm had just begun. I didn't move. I didn't need to. One call had started a chain reaction they couldn't control. Not anymore. You see, the call I made wasn't random. It wasn't impulsive. It had been waiting in my phone, saved as execute. Because for the last 7 months I had been watching everything, quietly, patiently, like a mother whose love had turned into something colder, sharper, but far more calculated. Mark had changed the moment he married Linda. At first it was subtle, fewer calls, cancelled visits, then it turned into cold indifference. I thought it was just growing pains, but then I saw the truth. Linda was never interested in being a wife. She was interested in power. And Mark, he didn't resist. He surrendered. She convinced him to put everything under her name, the house, the cars, even the company I helped him start. Slowly they pushed me out like some shameful secret, but I didn't push back. I observed. I took notes. I prepared. So when he stood there at the table tonight, in front of a dozen people and said, "You're not family," I knew it was time. Inside the house, I saw Mark grab his phone. His face dropped as he scrolled. Then again, his hand trembled. Linda shouted something at him, but he didn't respond. Because in real time their world was crumbling. The one call had triggered 4 simultaneous actions. I revoked the power of attorney I had quietly given Mark 3 years ago, the one that allowed him to access the shared inheritance his father left behind. I contacted my attorney, who immediately filed a motion to reclaim partial ownership of his company, because he'd been using my name and my credit on key documents to secure funding. A press release went out from a respected business outlet. Major legal dispute hits Trident Solutions. Founder's mother alleges fraud. That press release had been drafted weeks ago, just waiting for my go. And lastly, I triggered the quiet exit of their largest investor, Mr. Klein, a man I had once loaned money to during a hard season. He had promised me one thing in return. If Mark ever disrespects you like his father once did, I'll walk. No explanation needed. The house was unravelling like a poorly sewn curtain, one corner at a time. Linda stormed to the door and flung it open. "What did you do?" she hissed. I smiled politely. "What I had to." She stepped forward like she might scream, but something stopped her. Maybe it was the calm in my eyes. Maybe it was the sound of her phone buzzing again and again. "Fix it," she whispered. "You fix this right now." I tilted my head. "No, dear. I just got told I'm not family, and you made that very clear." Mark appeared behind her. His face was pale. "Mum," he said, voice dry. "We can talk about this inside." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, now you want me inside?" The irony hung between us like smoke. I leaned slightly forward. "Do you know how many times I sat outside this house, waiting for you to come out and say hello? Do you remember the texts I sent you that you never replied to? The meals I dropped off that were returned untouched?" Mark's jaw tightened. "This isn't the time." "No," I cut him off. "This is exactly the time." Linda looked over her shoulder. The dining room was nearly empty now. Half-eaten dishes. Uneasy silence. Everyone was gone. Even the staff had walked out. I had timed it all perfectly, because nothing reveals the truth like a silent table. Suddenly her voice changed, softer. "We didn't mean it like that. We were just overwhelmed. And you came without warning. You caught us off guard." I blinked slowly. "You sent me the time, and I brought dessert." A flicker of guilt crossed her face. Or maybe fear. I couldn't tell anymore. Mark stepped out fully now, standing beside her. I'm sorry, Mum. I was stressed. Business is falling apart. I didn't think you'd actually come. That sentence did something to me. I didn't think you'd actually come. Like I was some stray animal they left scraps for, assuming I'd stay away. I took one slow breath. You know what your father said the night before he died? Mark looked up. He said, I may not be here much longer, but your mother, she'll always be your home. Protect her, or one day you'll wake up with nothing. Mark's lips parted. I leaned in and whispered, Welcome to nothing. I turned and walked toward my car. The engine was still warm. I hadn't even needed to drive off. As I pulled out of the driveway, the front lights dimmed. The house looked smaller now, duller, like the soul had been sucked out of it. But I wasn't done, because that was just the business side. I hadn't even touched the personal side yet. And trust me, Thanksgiving was only the beginning. There was one final step, one message I hadn't yet delivered, a name they didn't know I had. And by the time they read it, they'd realize they'd built their empire on my foundation, and I was about to pull the ground out from under them. The next morning, I woke up to 37 missed calls and a dozen voicemails. Mark, Linda, even her mother. All of them were reaching out now. Funny how silence makes people remember who you are. I didn't answer any of them. Not yet. I let the messages pile up like snow on a roof about to collapse, each one more frantic than the last. Mum, please, I didn't mean it. You blindsided me last night. Why would you do this? This is your family. Come on, let's just talk. And finally, the one that made me pause. What did you mean by foundation? What else are you hiding? That's when I knew they were afraid, not of losing me, but of losing what they thought they owned. But that's the thing. They never owned anything. Not the house, not the company, not even the family name they carried so proudly. Because when my husband passed, he left me something they never bothered to ask about: controlling shares. They all assumed the company I helped Mark start had been handed off years ago, but in reality I kept 51%, on paper, through a quiet trust, with legal protection so dense even a shark couldn't bite through it. They never asked because they never thought I mattered. That's how entitlement works, it's blind. I made myself a cup of tea and sat down at my kitchen island. No calls, no texts, just peace. But peace isn't what this chapter needed. This chapter needed fire, and I knew exactly where to strike next. There was a folder in the bottom drawer of my study, locked, labelled with a name only I knew, Alex Whitmore. To anyone else, it sounded like a stranger. But to me, it was my second name, my real name before I took my husband's. And with it, I owned things no one in my family had any clue about, including a quiet 35% stake in a real estate development firm that happened to hold the loan on Mark and Linda's entire neighbourhood, including their house. When Mark begged me to co-sign, I didn't do it under my name. I did it under my legal birth identity. And now, that identity was about to reintroduce itself. I called Mr. Howard, the CEO of Whitmore Holdings. Pull the title on 45 Elmview Lane. I want a notification filed this afternoon. He paused. You're sure? Yes, I said. They'll understand soon. Understood, Ms. Whitmore. Consider it done. I hung up. That's when the doorbell rang. I opened it slowly, and there he was, Mark, standing on my porch like a little boy again, but this time he wasn't holding a soccer ball or asking for milk. He looked wrecked, suit half wrinkled, shirt untucked, red eyes. Can I come in? I didn't move. Why? Because I need to talk to my mother. My chest burned with emotion, but I kept it hidden. You said I wasn't family. He lowered his head. I didn't mean it. Then why'd you say it? Because Linda was watching. Her family was watching. I panicked. I raised my eyebrows. So it was easier to humiliate me than disappoint your wife. He looked up. Yes. At least he didn't lie. I stepped back, let him in, Not because I forgave him, but because I wanted him to see it. The file was already open on the counter. He sat down, scanned the pages, and his mouth opened slightly. Wait, what is this? That's your mortgage, I said calmly. It's held by Whitmore Holdings. I own 35% of the company. He flipped pages. You're joking. No. And the part you should pay attention to is that clause there. Look closer. He squinted. In the event of borrower breach or reputational risk caused to cosigner entity, lender reserves the right to adjust terms or trigger default. Mark looked at me like I'd turned into a stranger. You always told me you just wanted to help. I did, I said, but I also protected myself, because I've seen what power does to people like Linda, and what fear does to sons who forget where they came from. Mark's hands were shaking. So what now? You destroy us? I leaned forward. No, you already did that. I just opened the curtain so you could see the mess. He sat in silence for a long time, then said something I never expected. I don't even know who I am anymore. I nodded slowly. That's the first honest thing you've said in years. He stared down at the documents. What do you want? The question hit me like a wave. What did I want? An apology? No. A reversal? No. What I wanted was for them to feel it. The dismissal, the cold shoulder, the betrayal. I wanted Linda to realize the empire she married into was never hers, and I wanted Mark to remember what it feels like to be discarded. I stood up, walked to the fireplace, pulled out a letter I'd written months ago. I handed it to him. What's this? Instructions. He opened it, and his face drained. He read the first paragraph aloud. To whom it may concern, in light of recent events and pending legal review, the undersigned moves to reassign all board voting rights to the sole trust holder, Evelyn Whitmore. His lips trembled. You're taking the company. I own the company. But the team, our investors, they've already voted. He stumbled back from the table, knocking over a chair. You planned this. You planned all of this. I nodded once. I had to. The door opened behind him. Linda walked in. She was holding a newspaper. The headline read, Whitmore Holdings seizes control of Trident Solutions after family dispute. She looked at Mark, then at me. What have you done? I gave you exactly what you gave me, I said. She walked forward, eyes blazing. You've ruined us. No, dear, I whispered. I finally set things right. She slammed the paper down. This isn't over. We'll fight this. I met her eyes and said 4 words that made her legs buckle. You're not on the lease. She froze. Mark turned toward her. What is she talking about? I handed him one last document. His name. Only his name. On the ownership agreement for the house, Linda wasn't listed, not even as a tenant, because she never checked. She assumed, and I had waited patiently for this moment. He read it, then looked at her, and the look in his eyes. It was the same look I had when he said I wasn't family. Shock, hurt, and a sudden realization of betrayal. Linda tried to speak, but Mark stepped back. He said nothing. She turned to me. You wouldn't... I cut her off. You said I wasn't family. Now you're not even a guest. She stared at me in silence, and I walked to the door, opened it, and said, You should leave. But Linda didn't move. And that's when Mark said it. 4 words I never expected to hear from my own son. And they changed everything. Mark looked at Linda, then at me, then back at the crumpled contract in his trembling hand. The words came out slower than I expected, like each one was breaking off a layer of his old self. I want you out. Linda's eyes flared. What? Out of my house, he said again. Now. I didn't move. Neither did she. We both stared at him, but for different reasons. I was watching my son claw his way out of a decade-long fog. She was watching her grip on everything slip through her fingers like sand. "You don't mean that," she whispered. But Mark didn't blink. "You've been controlling my life since we got married. I defended you, protected you, shut out the only person who ever truly had my back. Look around you, look at what's left." She shook her head, still clinging to denial like a raft in open water. "She manipulated you. She set this up." Mark raised his voice. "No, you set this up. When you humiliated her in our home, when you laughed behind me after I told my own mother she didn't belong." Linda's jaw clenched. "I didn't laugh." "You did," he said. "And even if you hadn't, you never once tried to make her feel welcome." Silence. Pure, vibrating silence. Until Linda snapped. "You think she's innocent? She's been plotting this for months. She made one phone call and our lives fell apart." Mark turned to me slowly. "Was it just one call?" I met his gaze and said nothing. Because the truth was bigger than that, and he already knew it. Linda turned back to him, desperate now. "Don't do this. Not in front of her." "You already did," he whispered. "Last night, in front of everyone." Her face cracked like porcelain. "So that's it? You're choosing her?" Mark took a long breath. "I'm choosing what's right." And then he walked to the front door, opened it, and said it again. "Leave." Linda didn't move. "Mark, please, don't make me say it again." I expected her to scream or break something, but she didn't. She stood there for 3 full seconds. Then she picked up her purse, turned slowly, and walked out. The door clicked shut behind her like the end of a trial. Mark slumped into a chair like someone who'd just been pulled from a sinking car. "I don't even know where to start," he muttered. I walked over, calm and slow. "Then don't. Just sit." He did. I poured him tea, the same way I had when he was 10 years old and came home after losing the championship game. Back then he cried. Today he was too hollow even for tears. "How much damage are we looking at?" he asked after a while. "Business-wise?" "Yeah." "That depends," I said. "If you fight me, it gets worse. If you work with me, we rebuild. But I take full control. No more secrets, no more favors for Linda's family, no more pretending the past didn't happen." He nodded. "Deal." I studied him carefully. "You really mean that?" "I do." "Then prove it." I reached into my bag and handed him a small, worn notebook. He opened it. His face tightened. Dad's handwriting. "Every financial move he made in the last year of his life is in there," I said. "He always knew Linda was trouble. He tried to warn you." Mark flipped through it slowly. "I never knew he kept this." "Because you weren't listening then." He nodded again, slower this time. "But I'm listening now." It was a small start, but it was real. For the next 2 hours, we sat together in silence, drinking tea, reviewing documents, sifting through the ashes. For the first time in years, Mark looked like himself again, tired, raw, but real. Eventually, he asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Why did you wait so long?" I leaned back. "Because you don't wake someone up by shouting. You wait until they're ready to hear the alarm." He looked up at me, his eyes glossy but clear. "You think she'll come back?" "Probably," I said. "But not for love, for damage control." He nodded. "She always knew how to spin things." "Then you better learn how to stand straight." The day passed quietly after that. But peace never lasts long in families like ours, especially not when money and pride have been bleeding beneath the surface. That night, as I was brushing my hair in front of the mirror, my phone buzzed. A text from a blocked number. It said only this: "You've made a mistake. I'm not done with you." No name, no punctuation. But I knew the tone. I knew the venom behind the words. Linda wasn't going quietly. I picked up the phone, dialed my lawyer. "We may need to file a restraining order." He paused. "That bad?" "I don't trust what she'll do." Do you want protection detail? Not yet, I said. But prepare the documents. I hung up and walked back to the living room window. Across the street, a car idled in the shadows. Lights off. No movement. Just sitting there. I stared at it for a long time. My instincts whispered what I already suspected: she wasn't done. I called Mark. Is Linda staying with you? No, I haven't heard from her since she left. You sure? Positive. Then I think she's outside my house. A long pause. What do I do? He asked. Nothing, I said. She wants a reaction. Let her wonder what I'm planning instead. But even as I said it, I felt the cold edge of fear creep up my spine. Because power doesn't just fade. It fights. And Linda had always been the kind of woman who smiled with knives behind her back. The next morning, there was a package on my doorstep. No name, no label. Just a white box with a red ribbon. I didn't touch it. I called the police. When they arrived, they opened it for me. Inside was a single thing, a shattered family photo. Me, Mark, his father, Linda, our grandson, smashed, smeared with red lipstick. On the back of the frame, 4 words written in permanent marker. You started this war. I stared at it for a long time. Then I whispered, No, dear, you did. The officer asked if I wanted to press charges. Not yet, I said. She just drew her line in the sand. Now it's time I draw mine. Because Linda thought this was about revenge, about money, about humiliation. But she still didn't understand what she was really up against. She wasn't just fighting a grieving mother. She was fighting someone who'd already lost everything and built herself back from the rubble. And this time I wasn't backing down. I picked up my phone and called an old friend, someone who owed me a favour. Remember that file I gave you? I said. Yeah, the voice replied. You want me to release it? I looked out the window at the car still parked across the street. Yes, I said. It's time the world knew who Linda really is. The voice on the phone was silent for a moment. Then, consider it done. And that's when the next move began. A move that would not just expose Linda, it would destroy her carefully curated life, her reputation, her connections, and the secret she thought no one would ever uncover. Because I knew what she did in Chicago. And by the end of this week, so would everyone else. The file I had sent for release was one Linda never dreamed would surface. It had been buried for years, hidden behind NDAs and hush money, far away from our state, our family, and our name. But I knew the truth, because I was the one who wrote the check that kept her secret quiet the first time. She had no idea I kept a copy, no idea I'd held onto every thread. Until now. The story hit the web at exactly 8:04 a.m. the next morning. I was already awake, already dressed, already sipping coffee when I heard the first ping, then another, then another. Within 15 minutes, my phone was a symphony of buzzing chaos. Headline: Wife of Trident Solutions founder linked to abandoned elder care lawsuit in Illinois. Subhead: Anonymous whistleblower claims emotional abuse and financial mismanagement at former rehab center co-managed by Linda S. It was factual, cold, precise. Names were redacted in the article, but not in the documents attached. The receipts were there. Her signature, her staff's reports, her quiet settlement, sealed 3 years ago. Mark called instantly. What is this? I told you she had secrets, I said. I didn't know it was this bad. She built her image on a lie. I just let the world see the original version. He was silent for a long moment. She's going to come after you now. She already has, I said. That box on my porch, that was her first strike. She wanted to scare me. And you fired back. No, I finished what she started. Because you don't attack a woman who's already lost her husband, nearly lost her son, and sacrificed her entire youth to build a life for others. You don't call her not family and expect to walk away untouched. You don't laugh behind her back and expect that smile to protect you. You don't threaten her with silence. Not when she's found her voice. Later that afternoon, there was a knock on my door. I opened it slowly, expecting police. A reporter. Maybe even Linda. But it was her mother. A small, stern woman in her late 60s, with hard eyes and stiff posture. She looked me in the eye. "I warned her not to mess with you," she said plainly. She didn't listen. I raised an eyebrow. "And now?" "She's in a hotel, sobbing, swearing revenge. But I think she's just realizing she's burned every bridge she ever stood on." I stepped back to let her in. She shook her head. "No need. I just came to say one thing. And that is? I never liked you, but I respect what you did. That girl needed a fall. Maybe now she'll stop looking down on people." She left before I could respond. Funny, how even those who once sided against you will shift once the truth walks in. By nightfall, the story had been picked up by 2 national outlets. Her charity board stepped down. Her social media went silent. And Trident Solutions? They saw a 9% spike in investor interest because I issued a statement confirming new ethical leadership and structural reform. Mark signed the transfer paperwork without flinching. He gave me his vote of confidence publicly and his apology privately. It didn't fix everything, but it was something. A new place to start. "I still don't understand why you did it like this," he said one night as we looked over documents in my study. "Because you never would have listened if I'd just told you." He nodded slowly. "You're probably right." There was still tension between us, still gaps to close, but the walls were down. And that mattered. The next week, Linda tried to call me. I didn't answer. Then she tried the media. But no one listened. She tried to spin it as slander, then victimhood, then revenge from an embittered mother-in-law. But the receipts were too clean, the evidence too real. Her mask had cracked, and no one wanted to help her glue it back together. One night, 2 weeks later, Mark came by with my grandson. The boy ran into my arms like he always had before Linda started rewriting our family dynamics. I held him tighter than I meant to. He giggled. "Grandma, you smell like cookies." Mark smiled. He missed you. I missed him more. We ate together that night, at my table. No name cards, no cold shoulders, just family. At the end of the meal, Mark helped wash the dishes. The kitchen was quiet, the boy asleep on the couch. And then he said something I'll never forget. I said the worst thing anyone could say to their mother. I didn't speak. He continued. "But somehow you still showed up and protected me." "That's what mothers do," I whispered, "even when we don't deserve it. Especially then." He wiped his hands on a towel. "You've changed." I looked up. "No, you just finally saw me." We hugged, not like strangers, not like people patching things with duct tape, like family, the real kind, the kind that bleeds for each other, the kind that fights, but fights for something. And in that moment, I didn't care about the company or the board or the legal wins. I cared that my son remembered who he was, and who I was too. But just when I thought the story was done, the doorbell rang. It was late. Too late for friends. I opened it slowly, and there, standing in the rain, was Linda. Her eyes red, her hands shaking. She looked at me for a long time, then said only 3 words. "I'm pregnant." And just like that, everything changed.